Well, I never planned to be an attorney. It wasn't something that I always wanted to be as a child. And had you left it up to me in those days, I probably would have been some kind of professional athlete. But when I reflect back in high school, I was always very good in history and the social sciences. And in my teenage years, whenever I visited my relatives, they would always tune into shows like Perry Mason, Matlock, Murder She Wrote, all while I'm hanging out with my cousins on the weekends. So that was the extent of my interest in this kind of work. I was the typical teenager, more interested in sports than school at the time. Wasn't much of a public speaker back in those days, but somehow finding myself in debates and mock trials during high school and university. So I guess the law was always subconsciously in the background, but at the time I didn't pay much attention. I would have done most of high school in the Bahamas and eventually moved to Canada to complete the remaining 2 years in high school and did my undergraduate studies in political science there. Well, the idea of studying law would have come at that crucial point near the end of university while thinking about where I want to live in the future and how I would make a living, of course. Because let's face it, a political science degree isn't going to cut it. And at that time, I knew I had to be in a good profession. But even at that point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was that whatever I decided to do, the profession had to be something important, something meaningful. In studying political science, you saw where most of the iconic figures you studied throughout history were the lawyers. They were the game changers. They spoke out against exploitation and human rights violations, and so on. And so that would have been the crux that would have propelled me in that direction. So the decision to study law was more of a self-discovery of who I was and finding that passion.